on memory. Just have a read of this. This is from your textbook. Think of a fairly recent situation. Think about perhaps a day out that you've had or something that you've done recently. Try to picture the setting in your mind. Think about what the weather was like, the time of day, the context, how you were feeling. If you actually close your eyes and think about that, you might be surprised how much you recall information that you thought you'd actually forgotten. Think about this now from other people's perspective. Think about what it was like for one of your friends, for your mum, for your dad, or whatever. So the idea being here is that you can create in your mind a really quite realistic picture using a lot of retrieval cues of a situation. This is what we're going to base the lesson on today, and we're going to come back to this, and you're probably going to understand why I'm asking you to do that. So the focus of the lesson today is to explore the use of the cognitive interview, and it's the final part of memory, and this is kind of where it ties everything together and gives us, if you like, a real life application where we can see where memory research has actually gone and what it's actually led to. So what is the cognitive interview? So first of all, there's a clip at the bottom there. If you want to click on it, you've got this presentation. I think it's actually in your Teams folder. It is lesson 21, but I'm doing it as lesson 14. The cognitive interview is a method of interviewing based on techniques to improve memory recall, and it's also to reduce leading questions. So it's a technique that's used to improve the way that we recall, and if you like, to kind of improve eyewitness testimony. So that's what this is actually for. So named on the spec is the cognitive interview. So you need to know what it is, how to use it, what are the different parts of it, what you would use it for, be able to evaluate it, and then be able to apply it. So first of all, a little bit of background. What is this based on? So first of all, sometimes when we're trying to remember, retrieval paths are not always available. And if you've ever had that tip of the tongue phenomena where you think, I know what it is, but I can't actually remember. What is it? And it's on the edge of the tip of your tongue. So that's when there's a retrieval path that isn't there. You're not able to access it. So the first principle from psychology is if we can't access a retrieval path, we try to change the order or the perspective to try to help do that. Now, I always think about when I've lost something or I can't find something, I retrace my steps. So I work backwards, if you like. And this is kind of what this is like. So this is the first principle that this is based on. Secondly, a memory trace is based up of several features. So in order to access a memory, we try to use as many cues as possible. And this is something that I always use. What was I doing at the time? So when I lost my keys, where was I? I retrace my steps, I go back. So you could argue that this is called context reinstatement. You might not really think about how you feel, but if you think about, I've just asked you to do that earlier by asking about a previous event. So actually, the things named here are basically what the cognitive interview is. Report everything. Sometimes when you're asking people to recall something that's happened to them, you ask them to recall as many trivial details as possible, and that's possibly to try to get as much accurate detail as possible. So this is the cognitive interview, and it's actually very straightforward. It's very basic in a lot of ways, and it's got 4 principles. So if you are asked to describe the cognitive interview, I would advise you to mention these 4 principles or aspects. Having said that, you don't always have to use them all, but these are the aspects of a cognitive interview. Number 1, report everything. What's key about that is all trivial events. So I'll have a look afterwards at how this is different from a standard police interview or a standard interview. But one of the key features of a cognitive interview is that you must report everything. 2, recreate the original context. So that could be how you felt, where you were, who was around you. Try to create, whether it's in your head or going back to the original context. change the order. So start backwards, start from the middle, start from different perspectives. And change perspective. So that could be, how did the police, what would the police have seen when they turned up? What do you think the victim would have been able to see at this point? What do you think someone from the other side of the pub would have been able to see? So these are developed by Fisher and Gieselman, although Elizabeth Loftus has been very involved in the development of the cognitive interview. So this is just an application question. Which of the 4 techniques of the cognitive interview are being used in the above statement? So if I just go through these here, a police officer is trained in a cognitive interview. She gives the witness the following instruction: please tell me as much as you can remember about what you saw. So what we've got is reporting everything, so giving every detail. And the key thing here is, please do not leave anything out, even if you think they are just unimportant, small details. And that's the key thing about report everything. And that's where this is different from the standard police interview. Because in a standard police interview, the police officers tend to say, okay, what happened on that day? To start with, right, where were the people? But this is, right, let's talk about what happened when you got up that morning. So really trying to report everything and recreate that original context. That's because we know already that it's a way of accessing a retrieval path. If we can reinstate as much of the context as possible, we can access those memory traces. So that's the reason behind that. Just looking, if you like, at changing the order, that's to prevent lying. Why would you change the order? Well, if somebody's lying, they won't be able to say it backwards, they won't be able to say it from different perspectives. So that's the rationale behind that. For the 3 other techniques, write down the exact wording of the instructions a police officer might give. So obviously there you're going to say they would recreate the original context. Can you imagine where you were, how you felt, what you were wearing, and so on. I'm just going to go now, and I will make sure that I upload this, but here I've got the actual original document, as you can see, by Gieselman and Fisher. And it's the original journal article. It's quite long, it's very lengthy. But if you're interested, you can have a look at this, and you can have a look at where this actually came from. So this is the background behind the cognitive interview. And this is actually quite useful for you, because you can also see the way that a psychology experiment is written up. And if we have a look here, you can see we've actually got the 4 features of the cognitive interview. So first of all, reinstate the context. Try to reinstate your mind, everything surrounding the incident. Report everything. Some people hold back information because they're not sure. Please do not edit anything. Recall the events in different orders. So it's natural to go from beginning to end, but try to go from different orders and then change perspective. And again, if you want, you don't have to use all of this. You don't have to know everything in this, but this is just in case you want to go and have a look at that original journal article, so that you've got an idea of what they actually found and how significant it actually is. Okay, so going back to the PowerPoint, and I will make sure that that's uploaded. The title of it is Cognitive Interview Journal Article, but it's the original article. Okay, so going back to this, you should be able to do that. It's actually very straightforward. So now moving on to some evaluation, what I would like you to do is read through all the studies in your handouts which have assessed the effectiveness of the cognitive interview. Now you've obviously got the original journal article there, so you've got the original article and what was actually done by Fisher and Gieselman. You've also got the chapter from your textbook, or the pages from your textbook, which you can use. And you've also got the studies that are included in the Tutor to You pack and in your memory booklet. Try to write a conclusion summarising how effective you think the cognitive interview is. So think about the strengths of it. How is it able to extract more accurate and detailed accounts? Try to use counter-arguments if possible, and then evaluate the credibility of the studies using the research methods. So think about how many participants were used and so on. I would advise you to have a look at a piece of research that compares, and the main study that I would be looking at compares a cognitive interview with a standard police interview, because if you're looking at the strengths of something, it's always good to compare it to something. So first of all, evaluation. What is not good about this? Well, first of all, different police forces tend to use different aspects. And that's probably because it's so time consuming to use all 4 aspects for every interview. So you will find that some police forces, and if you have a look at your textbook, you'll see that certain police forces use certain bits of it. So a lot will use the reinstate context, but not much else of it. Probably because it's time consuming, and probably because it actually requires a lot of training. It's not just something that every police officer would be able to do. So because we don't get comparison of complete cognitive interviews, it's very difficult to compare and evaluate its effectiveness fully. The technique takes a lot more time than is often available, because if you think about how many witnesses might be needed to be interviewed following a crime, it might not be viable. You might not have enough hours or enough staff to be able to do this. And the quality and quantity of cognitive interview training is also a major issue here. So this isn't something that's used all the time. However, it does generally get more correct information when compared to a standard police interview. What this says here is the research that's in the textbook. Often there are just as many errors, but overall you do get more information. And it's very useful in reducing miscarriages of justice, where a lot of less appropriate techniques are used to gain information. For example, in somewhere like Brazil or other South American countries, where they might use things like torture to extract information from prisoners, which obviously is not something that's used in our country. Okay, so the final task, putting this all together, explain how the cognitive interview technique improves the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. If you're answering a question like this, please note that you are not just describing the cognitive interview, you are looking at how it improves the accuracy. So ideally it would be good if you could keep saying, and this improves the accuracy because. Make sure that you explain your points. Now, a lot of teachers would state that you need to have 3 points here. You don't. You just need to make sure that whatever point you've got has got a full explanation. So these are some of the points that you could have talked about. First of all, there are no misleading questions. So therefore, there is a reduction in errors or false information. Explain what you mean by that. And the idea that there are no misleading questions means, if you like, that we're definitely going to get a lot more valid data. Reporting more detail using different perspectives, different orders, ensures that nothing is missed out and therefore more information is going to be recalled. And finally, trivial details such as context reinstatement could trigger memories that would otherwise have been left out. So these, if you like, are the key features of how they improve your memory. You don't have to use them all, or you could use them all in less detail. Here are some true or false questions. The cognitive interview consists of 5 stages. Is that true or false? The cognitive interview is found to be more effective than the standard interview. True or false? All the stages must be used for the interview to be successful. The success of the cognitive interviewer depends on the skills of the interviewer. If you have any problems with these, please let me know. They're not all true. As always, please message me if you have any concerns with this, and please ensure that you're able to answer the exam questions. Thank you.